Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ayana Wallace View, and I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Manager with Ujima, the National Center on Violence Against Women in the Black Community. I'm really excited for this workshop today, talking about culturally specific safety planning, and even more excited to have my amazing friend and amazing advocate on with us today, Kalyn Foy. Brief overview again of this workshop. We really want it to be interactional. We really want folks to make sure you're giving your input, giving your insights in the chat. If Kaylin asks you to come off mute, please do that. But this workshop is really geared at building advocate capacity to serve and respond to survivors and their culturally specific needs, their realities, and especially around safety planning. And so we really wanted to make sure this workshop is grounded in survivor-centered and responsive advocacy, excuse me, so that again, folks are getting super practical skills on how to work with survivors to the best of their again, to the best of their ability and really increase capacity. So I'm going to quickly introduce Kalyn. Many of you probably know her. She's done amazing work in the field with Ujima as well. Kalyn Foy is a subject matter expert and expert consultant. Please welcome her. She's an internationally recognized advocate, author, and empowerment coach with nearly 2 decades of experience transforming lives and organizations. Kalyn holds a master's degree in human resources administration and has dedicated her career to ending domestic and sexual violence. As a survivor of as a survivor herself, she founded Sisters Acquiring Financial Empowerment, SAFE, back in 2006 and served over 6,400 survivors in pioneering innovative economic empowerment programs. Most recently serving as a training and technical assistance manager with Ujima Inc. She is my TTA twin. Kalyn has designed and delivered training programs across national networks and provided technical assistance to organizations nationwide. She's the author. She's the author of the Dreams and Visions Goal Setting Workbook. I have it. It's incredible. Folks get into it for sure. And the creator of Soft Life Personal Coaching Experience, helping women navigate major life transitions with grace and purpose. Kalyn's expertise has been recognized internationally. She has presented at the World Conference of Women's Shelters, been featured, been featured by the White House in Essence magazine, and received the prestigious Spirit of Advocacy Award from the National Network to End Domestic Violence. Kalyn Foy is a true champion for survivors and a powerful voice for change. And again, always really excited to just be in space with Kalyn, learn from her, hear about her experience and how she's worked with survivors. And so I know this conversation is really going to be amazing. Again, folks lean all the way into the conversation, add your thoughts. And I'm going to pass it over to Kalyn.
Awesome. Thank you, Ayana. I appreciate you. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, if that's your time of day or wherever you are. We're going to get into it. You can put in the chat, do some networking, put in the chat where you're from and your contact information or anything else you want others to know, because this is, again, as she said, is an interactive conversation. And so you might share something that somebody wants, if you want someone to follow up with you. If you don't put your contact information there. But if you're comfortable with it, I think mentoring, networking, and supporting each other is one way for us to grow stronger together. So she did such a good job in introducing myself. I always have these slides in to advocate for myself. Because people will say, I'm not reading the bio, I'll just switch it over to you. But a little bit about me. In addition to me founding Sisters Acquiring Financial Empowerment in 2006. So this is my 20th year of advocacy. I can't even believe it. I recently founded in September of last year the Virgin Islands Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'm the executive director of the territory-wide coalition here in the Virgin Islands to fill a gap of services. There hasn't been a coalition here in over 3 years. So I definitely lean on you all support as I go into this new endeavor. So she mentioned some of these things that I do, but I also worked in the area of technical assistance since 2015, and that also includes the work that I did at Ujima. So I love training, coaching, helping, supporting. I started a business, the Soft Life Coaching, and I also have the book that I wrote as well. So my coaching is specifically for Christian entrepreneurs who are looking to expand or grow their businesses. So that's my for-profit arm. So here's some more qualifying photos. I feel like photos are 1,000 words. So and I wanted to also share some photos of the work that I did in Detroit with SAFE. So the top picture is an economic justice conference that I will hold annually for 100 survivors in regards to helping them start or they were all startup to start their businesses. And I'm very proud to say that through that work, the Open for Business Conference, opportunity, preparation, entrepreneurship, and networking, that there are many people who still have their businesses today, businesses that have expanded to even hire other people and grow. So just wanted to tell you about that. And at the bottom is a huge community event that we will host every year, Safe Health and Wealth Expo, that will have over 900 participants. We had Sam's Club that would donate water. Whole Foods donated 1,000 lunches. It was we would have over 60 vendors, and at one year we had 60 breakout sessions, yoga, childcare activities, just all type of things around. It was a domestic violence awareness event, a free community event. It was the intersection of economic abuse, domestic violence awareness, as well as your health. So how could we have such these large scale um, outreach events that would center survivors and keep them safe in the city of Detroit? And that's what I really wanted to talk about today, was some of the things that I would do and my approach in not just the events, but even our ongoing direct services work. And this was 2006 when I started, before a lot of this language and frameworks and conversations that we have now were even around. It was really, I started the organization. I'm a survivor, and these are the things that I wish existed for me that weren't around when I had my situation in 1998. 1998 was only 4 years after the Violence Against Women Act went into law. And when I went to the program at that time seeking help in regards to economic support, they really treated me like I was trying to get over. And why are you worried about that? You need to be worried about the fact that you need reconstructive facial surgery, that he crushed your eye socket. Why are you worried about the fact that you're going to get evicted? And so um, I did not really want to start. I wasn't thinking about starting an organization. So I took the time from 1998 to 2006 to heal, to focus on myself, to get support from my daughter, who was 4 years old at the time. And then in 2006, God told me to start this organization, Safe. And so when I started, I literally had nothing. And I really had to think about, how can I keep survivors safe as a grassroots organization with no funding, no nothing, you know? And so those are some of the things I really wanted to talk about today. These pictures that you see now are, I've transitioned into living in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so since here, these are just pictures of me with my book signing, and me starting my coaching business. All right. So some of the things that I really wanted us to talk about is how, safety, of course, beyond physical, but what does that mean in the span of specifically supporting Black survivors in safety planning? Really thinking about systemic barriers. How can we put a minimum footprint in a survivor's life as we do their work, and not overtake them with us and our systems and our policies? How to lead in love, advocacy, and just planning through it. So I want to also leave you with at least 3 to 5 things that you could put to work tomorrow or Monday, because today's Friday. So don't work on Saturday. Self-care. Monday, Monday, I want you to think about what are some things. And that could even be maybe some things that some of these, because it's some amazing, I'm looking at the people in the chat. It's some heavy hitters here today. So they might also have some things to contribute as we come off chat or as they, off mute and have conversations or in the chat itself. So please feel free to share best practices and things of that nature because there are literally people on every end of the spectrum here of experience, of advocacy. We have emerging advocates here as well as what do I call us? Us in the church they would say seasoned saints. Us our advanced advocates. I don't know.
I like that. I like that. Season, season.
We've been around. We've been around. So we want to do some unpacking. We want to plan, really talk about what it looks like in this modern day and how can we build with survivors, not at them. Nobody wants to be talked at, you know. And I really want us to, I always like to have actionable. Like, I don't like to just leave a workshop like, that was nice. They talk so nice. I like them. What they talk about. It was nice though. All right. So the first key, the cornerstone for this is to listen. And listening is not I really want to put some like heavy hitting hard concepts in this. But I said, well, sometimes you have to start with the basics. And so basics is active listening. That is something that has not been afforded to Black survivors, that people actually listen to their concerns, listening to what they say, listening as they are the experts of their story, their experience, what resources they have, what access they have, what their comfort level is, truly listening to them, not listening just so that you can check off a worksheet, not listening so that you can quickly say, okay, this is what you need to do, but really deep listening, active listening, and listening that they what they're saying is the truth and that you believe them. All right. So that's step number one. You can do that on Monday, I'm sure, right? You're doing that already, right? Okay. We want to refrain from rationing survival. In 2026, I've been doing this for 20 years. I honestly didn't expect that I would still see this happening today, and unfortunately, it does happen. Um, Survivors are still being treated as they trying to get over. They trying to get over on a bus ticket or Uber ride or whatever. And so your office is one of the doorways to safety. And so it's important that you don't ration out the help, support, etc. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself because that was a part that I wanted to talk to. I want to acknowledge that sometimes comes from a space of vicarious trauma. You hearing the story a trillion times. You have your own problems. Your child's school called right before the survivor came in. Maybe this is my story. The child's school called, and you have to go up there for a parent teacher conference meeting because she cut up in class. This is my story. I don't know about you. And now a survivor comes in, and I have to give them my full attention, completely listen to them, be empathetic, resourceful, supportive, all the things while still managing all the things that I have, my own survivorship, vicarious trauma. I've heard so many stories. I'm trying to process all of this. How do we do it? Maybe this is a good time for us to get some feedback. Any seasoned saints out there want to give your tips, or even if you say I'm still working on it, I think people would appreciate that. Anybody in the chat? Anybody dare to come offline?
Can you ask the question again?
The question, the question is, the question is, how do you still show up fully for survivors, even if you have your own stuff going on or had your own stuff going on? You're still processing stuff. How do you move forward? So, an example could be that for me, after work hours, I don't watch traumatic movies, TV shows. I don't watch anything about domestic violence. People will send me links all the time, like, "Oh, is this good movie on in Netflix about domestic violence?" No, ma'am. I'm watching anime.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I have a thought as other people are gaining their thoughts and getting their thoughts together too. One thing for me that was actually kind of difficult to recognize at first was that, especially because it wasn't just like a practice, but was that my wellness and my self-care directly impacts my, like recognizing it that it does actually directly impact my ability to work with survivors, to get creative, to find alternate solutions, to like ask deeper questions. Because if I'm unfocused or I'm overly stressed for my own personal stuff or just like processing trauma, or trying to process it on my own, I'm not able to really give them what they need.
So, what does that look like to you? Does that look like we're not being hypocrites and we're advising survivors to get group help or see a therapist or talk to a counselor, and then we don't do the same for ourselves? Make it make sense. Like,
Yeah.
getting professional help is important for us as well. In addition to that, but also going to the doctor. I do remember distinctly my early years, I'm grinding, I'm starting a new program, I'm a new ED, I'm new to the nonprofit world. I didn't go to the doctor, wasn't getting annual physicals, dental checkups, just letting myself, I was
Hmm.
taking my children and then just totally neglecting my own self.
Yeah.
Doris O'Neill, you could come off mute.
Hello. So
Hello.
totally agree with the things that you're saying. I've been in the field 30 plus years. And back in coming into the field, nobody talked to us about burnout and about, self-care. And so over the years, like you just said, working fully going for everybody but ourselves. And so self-care has become a big conversation with my team because if we're burnt out, how can we receive what the survivor is telling us? And we're so, we're only human, so you can't have so many things on your mind at one time. And so it's like, can you leave it at the door when you walk in? Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. But like you said, you get that phone call from the school and oh my God, I gotta go up here because my kid's showing out. I've been there too. Been there too. So know how all of that feels. But I think the recognizing burnout is really important early on and for leadership to recognize when their team is at a point of burnout. I can tell by some of my staff when they're like on a burnout mode. So it's like you need to take some time off. You can take a mental health day. You don't have to be sick. You don't have to have a cold, but you can take a mental health day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. What I really got from that was putting the systems in place, and that leadership puts the systems in place to actually support people before they have to take off long stretches of time for sick leave before it gets really bad, to support that. So thank you so much for being the first one to step up with the second one. All right. Second, we of course we believe all survivors. But what does that actually look like? What does that look like in believing all Black survivors? When we have been indoctrinated, the news, things of that nature, sometimes we believe people to a point or to the limits of our own capacity. So what I would challenge you to do, because I have a lot of information I'm just trying to get through. I really packed this PowerPoint, this presentation, but I would challenge you to challenge yourself. And at the point that you start to doubt, or like, this story doesn't sound right, or she's really sitting there with the flat effect and she's not crying or anything like that, she's probably not telling the truth. So challenge yourself. Why do you feel that way? And then try to do some more research, talk to other people, get support for yourself. Um, Even if it might sound have somebody that you can genuinely talk to. Like, okay, I had this situation, this person I was talking to, and I feel this way. What do you think about that? Or research what are the signs of trauma in survivors, because that affects Black survivors as well. And it's already hard enough to come forward and to talk about it.
Kalyn, can I give you, you always have me thinking of stuff that I've seen in or in the work I've experienced. When you had that line of like, we believe survivors to a point, I think that it unintentionally happens very often of like, and it's sometimes things that we're informed of organizationally of like, okay, this makes sense up until this point, and then you have to question it. I'm thinking about, I've worked with especially stalking survivors. It was challenging for a lot of advocates to understand sort of how they were safety planning because they might have been giving information to their stalker about like where they were or phone numbers that changed. But it was part of their safety plan, and it made a lot of sense once you understood what that looked like. But face value, folks were like, well, yeah, we believed it up until she said she was giving her, the new address or giving the new phone number and not really going past that. So that just made me think of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We want to know that safety planning is never one size fits all for Black survivors. There's so many levels: culture, community, identity, systemic barriers, all the isms or the classes of the everything, all these different things that play in place of what safety could look like, what level of support is needed, and not getting insulted if you feel that this person should accept because they have nothing what you have to offer them, whether it's clothes out of the clothes closet, whether it's, accept this food and they're like, well, I'm vegan. How you gonna be vegan and homeless? I've heard this, you know. And so really just being accepting of people where they are, um, and what they need and what they require, and allowing them to have that autonomy to say no, and you're not taking it personal because they don't want to stay in the shelter. Right. Another part of this is really as we plan costly specific services for Black survivors to call on the experts in this field, like Ujima, for example. If you're questioning how do you implement this into your work, into the things that you do, there's TA that's available, there's resources, and there are definitely people. If you stumble or if you question, it's better to get some help. Okay, I just had to put that disclaimer out there. All right. As survivors come to you for help and support in the Black community, they may have a village. So we could plan with the people that love them or without the people that love them, because the village could be toxic. The village could be amazing. The village could be a mixture. It could have some sprinkles of some amazing and some toxic, it's real life. And so they may come to you and say, "Oh, my godmother, my cousin," and you try to find out how this person is really their cousin. It's their cousin, might not be by blood. Back in the day, we would say play cousins, which is just as much or if not more than the church family. Chosen family could really be a real source of help for a survivor. And so if you're like, well, I can't give that person information, or I can't, they can't ride, and I can't pay for their Uber ride to ride with you, but you would normally pay for another family member to ride with the person, or just really restricting that person just because they aren't actually quote unquote related to them, can cause real harm for them. Talking to survivors around, and this is a really hard conversation. So also thinking about Black survivors and how we feel about our family, whether it's blood or through a choice, right? Having conversations around planning without those people, if they're going to put them in harm. That could even include their children, because if the child tells the abuser, or depends on your community. So for example, Detroit is a larger place, but still information travels. here in St. Thomas is 3 islands with a total of like less than 130,000 people amongst all 3 islands. I think it's like 90,000 people amongst all 3 islands was the last census count, which that's a whole nother conversation about how the census was here. I'll spare you from that this time, but that would be a good workshop for the future. But anyway, um, so the word here is melee on how gossip spreads like crazy and has definitely been a detrimental to survivors on multiple levels. And so much so that it prevents survivors from actually going to services to get help because the people, it might be a cousin, a second, third cousin that works at the program. They heard about the story of the woman who tried to go to a hotel to get away, and the front desk person was related to the abuser, called the abuser. Oh, she's staying at a hotel. A man must be coming to meet her, and then she was murdered. And so everybody's situation is different, looking at regional differences, looking at geographical differences, looking at listening to the survivor and what they say about their family member, talking to them about the safety risk of different information getting out, and having that robust conversation with them, letting them lead the conversation, but giving them information with love that could also help and support them, depending on the situation and what they say. Another challenge of that in the Black community to getting support is, not necessarily wanting to go to systems because you don't want to put another Black man, another Black person in the system. Um, and so you're concerned about that. And so you might sacrifice your own self to prevent that from happening. And so being as an advocate, being aware that if you're getting frustrated with them because they don't want to go to the police or they don't want to file a record, and maybe the abuser already has a record and they're like, okay, well, that's going to separate them from my children. It's a variety of reasons why, but it's very deep-seated reasons and very valid reasons. So not to invalidate their reasoning or their desire to kind of protect their abuser in a way that you may not understand doesn't invalidate the fact that they were still abused and that the survivor needs services from you, and not to withhold your support and your services because they aren't necessarily wanting to go through the traditional systems in regards to the abuser. Okay? All right. What happens in this house? And there might be different terms from it, but what goes on this house, what happens in this house stays in this house. What's said in this house stays in this house. What we do in this house, don't nobody need to know what goes on outside, however you phrase it. So not airing your dirty laundry, not telling other people is a real barrier to getting services. This is something that has been indoctrinated in us for years. This was originally a safety mechanism for safety back in the day, and it's just transcended through the generations. My mother told it to me, so this isn't like a back in the day kind of thing. Uh, and so it's hard. You're looking for maybe a survivor to come to your program and just blah, 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 everything that's happened to them, their whole life story, their whole life history, and they've been trained not to do that. And the training comes from giving examples like, oh, you see how they told this, and then their child ended up in CPS, and you're like, oh my God, your little kid, like, oh my God, I don't want to go to foster care. I'm not going to tell. So these are the examples of real life stories that will happen in your community to keep you to not share. And so sharing happens through relationships. And I really think of it in advocacy as back before, child, I'm old. So back in the day, before the 20 years before I started doing this work, I was actually in the area of human resources. And I worked for a HMO and a hospital in Detroit. And I taught people the HIPAA laws. Like when they first came out, I remember when the HIPAA laws came out. when the laws came out, I was talking about that. So I think of that in my advocacy work. So HIPAA in the hospital is the Health Insurance Protection Act. I forget all the other P. But the short story of it, to give you a very brief training, is what is the minimum amount of information do you need to do your job? Do you need to know that the patient had a hangnail 10 years ago for you to process their insurance paperwork? No, you don't. So, what is the minimum amount that you need? So, do you need the survivor to walk you through their whole history of abuse that might go back through childhood to now, for you to understand, for you to relate to them, for you to be empathetic, to want to help them? So, if you say, oh, poor thing, yeah, it was terrible. Yes, I want to help you. Do you need to know all of that? In addition to that, do you need all of this vicarious trauma dumped on you as well? Not saying you don't want to know, but what do you need to know to help the person? Do you need to know that their grandma was abused, that their great grandma was abused, that their sister was abused? No, you don't. Unless it has something to do with this particular situation. And maybe you need to help the whole family. What is the minimum amount that you need? That would also help the survivor in the what goes on in this house stays in this house if they feel they don't have to share everything. They just need some help. They're telling you, I need housing. Okay. All right. Any questions, anything in the chat? So one of the bigger challenges is a fear of systems. And this is a rational fear. You know, it's not an unfounded fairy tale make believe, it's a rational fear. So when you're talking about parents asking for help, they're also concerned about what level is CPS going to get involved? How is this going to affect my children? How is this going to affect my kids even going to school every day? How can we still stay in our community? Are you going to displace us? So thinking about all of these different systems and how it affects Black survivors specifically, what can you do to mitigate the risk, to mitigate, to reduce the risk, to reduce the challenges with these different intersections as much as possible to because what also happens is one person's children, they come to your program, their children get taken by CPS. Now that's the word on your program. And then you're like, well, why don't people come to our program? You know, because you didn't reduce the risk, people are risk averse. Makes sense. Okay. All right. I
Can I
want
give
to
a quick
talk.
thought?
Yes.
So I was recently at a meeting with a whole bunch of advocates from across the country, and we were talking about mandated reporters. And there's an assumption. I was thinking specifically about the hospital example, and I'll get to that in a second. But there was the assumption that everyone doing advocacy is a mandated reporter, and that's actually not true. And it's really based on your state and your state laws. But I'm thinking specifically about, I did a lot of work in Maryland, and specifically, there were hospitals in Maryland that, because they assumed they were mandated reporters, had things in their protocols, like when a rape survivor would come in, they would automatically refer them to police without asking the survivor. Like that was an automatic referral, and it did a lot of negative damage to survivors and domestic violence survivors as well. A lot of negative damage to survivors or negative impacts for survivors who really just wanted to come in to address that piece of their safety, not to then engage with different systems, even domestic violence organizations. They didn't necessarily want that direct referral. And so when people are doing work, just safety planning in general, like again, lean into what the survivor is asking for and then expand, but don't just automatically assume that's what they're going to want or that's what you have to do because you're an
I
advocate.
like that. I think that that's a good conversation that, and it's definitely not a widespread, wide known thing. I think people have taken that blanketed approach. I think that would be a good space for state coalitions to lead on, and maybe the national coalitions could inform the state coalitions that that's something that they need to train and lead on. You've definitely given me an idea of one of our first trainings.
Yep.
So, I think that's where information, and then you all as program experts and advocates, that you go to your state and you ask for that specific training, because if they get enough requests, then they will, they'll be like, okay, this is what everybody's asking for, and then they'll provide that training. I think that that could really, really, really make a difference in regards to that's a huge issue. And so if even if there was like some policies or some law that they could actually like refer to state by state to know where you are instead of guessing. So I love that. Thank you so much, Ayana, for sharing. Okay, now I want to talk about smaller organizations. So advocacy and agency without borders, but this also includes larger organizations as well. Specifically, I'm talking to larger organizations and the small organizations. And really thinking about your work doesn't have to happen in the office to be valid. And what does that mean? So we want to provide culturally specific services to Black survivors, but we expect them to come to our office to receive services, to receive bus tickets, gift cards, whatever. Um, and that could put them in harm's way. If you live in areas like Detroit and St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, public transportation is terrible. There is not ride services available in the Virgin Islands. So you putting people at a disadvantage to get the services. You're already kind of creating a situation. So what if the work doesn't have to be held in your office to be valid? Have we thought about what that could look like? And more than just, so we could look at and think about what can we do virtually? What services can we provide virtually or remotely? What can we do in having maybe mobile stations or mobile community mini stations, for example? So one thing that I did with my organization that I started 20 years ago with none of the language and the frameworks was I didn't have an office, and I didn't let that be a barrier when I was starting. I said, what do I have? I have my hands. That's what I had. That's all I had. It was nothing in the hands. I said, okay, I got me in my hands. Let's get to work. And so the organization was focused on economic justice for survivors. And my background was human resources. So I first started helping survivors with how do you seek work if you're being stalked? How do you form your resume if you had a lot of different jobs or breaks in employment due to the abuse? How do you present during interviews when you've been mentally and emotionally abused? How do you interview well? Your interviewing skills and things of that nature, all things around how to seek work. So even things like one thing that I really stressed to survivors was to get a Google Voice number. Um, Google Voice is really good because if you are having a funding issues, you don't, your phone number gets cut off. Now the job that you were applying for, your doctor's office, the kids' school, they don't have your new number. You're constantly like having to update all of these different places versus a Google Voice number is separate. You don't even have to transfer it to your phone. Like you have to transfer it originally to set it up, but then you could take off the transferring and just check it from a desktop, which could also keep you safe because then the abuser isn't seeing you get those messages in. So it does so many different things. So I highly recommend it. Google Voice is a way to reach and contact with survivors and giving them that free worksheet. Okay. But thinking about what else it could look like as far as how can we help survivors who may not come to our office. So is this maybe a worksheet or something that they can start to plan and start to think about safety plan? We always feel like we have to be there with them to sit there to oversee them. It is good if that's the case, but what about for those survivors that aren't going to come? Can we still provide some kind of support for them? If we create an app, if we made a web page, are we open to doing text messages? What would that look like? And everything goes back to when they're ready for help, letting them know you're available, that you maybe have a mobile day that you were at this beauty salon. Or what I used to do was actually reserve space in the public library to meet with survivors. And then there was a local Starbucks that would let me meet with survivors in the Starbucks. So these would be where I would be out in the community advocacy kind of days. Now, when we would be at the Starbucks, we weren't talking about their personal information. We would then do like mock interviews or go over their resume, something that would seem perfectly normal to anyone else in the Starbucks at that time. So thinking about what does that look like in 2026? And with all of the technology and the advancements, good and bad, we're going to talk about a little bit of digital technology in a minute. But what does that look like? Um, what can this look like? What are the possibilities? Sometimes we get stuck in this is how things are always done. But thinking specifically about what do the Black survivors need in my community, and how can we meet the need in more of an out of the box kind of way? All right. All right, not judging the book by its cover. I'm not going to get into this too much, but really thinking about Black women and how we like to present ourselves and how that can be judged like, oh, she got a new wig, she got her hair done, she got her nails done. But all of these things have been protective factors through the years so that we weren't judged, because we were told we were dirty, nasty, over sexualized, all the things. And so sometimes we will, from our outer effect, overcompensate so that we're treated fairly and that we aren't looked down on. And so this is how someone may come to your office. They may have had things before the abuse. They might have had diamonds in the car before the abuse, but now they need help with housing. So don't withhold resources and support based on what you think you might see externally. I want to talk a little bit about faith. Sometimes faith can be used as a weapon. What does that look like? Is your organization prepared to have conversations around faith and spirituality? How spirituality can also be a great source of safety and support for a survivor, and how survivors may really lean on their church network to provide real safety, a place to go, mutual aid. And you can also include that in the map. But thinking about how you as an agency can really work with the faith-based organization beyond just we go and do a speech on Mother's Day or at the women's tea. What does it really look like? How can you engage the faith-based community where a lot of, and this is multi-faith across faith. So think about the variety of faiths in your community that Black people engage with, and how can you support them to support advocates? How can you create trust with the faith-based community so that they in turn refer people to you, so that they call you at the first glance instead of them trying to awkwardly and inappropriately handle it themselves? How can you train them and help them to be stronger, not advocates, but ambassadors? Thinking about faith, and I don't know if that's a slide coming up, but I'm gonna talk about it now. But talking about, speaking of faith in regards to faith-based giving, and so as you work through your budgets with survivors, if they say, okay, I tithe or I have to give this faith-based offering, what does that look like? How do you handle it without judgment, by being supportive and by still helping them to move forward with their financial goals? Because this may be a tenet of their faith, just the same level of any other person of faith that you may work with, that you may respect what they do, giving this Black survivor the equal weight around her faith-based practices, whatever they might be. So really, in this slide, I wanted to talk a little bit around in regards to safety planning, and how, sometimes it is how to hide, how to get away. So like here in the territory, that might mean relocation to another island, or to somebody to move to the States, for example. So thinking about different resources that you can have in that to help a survivor uh, not be seen per se by their abuser. So, for example, Um, in the work that I did in regards to economic abuse, I would talk when talking about how to help a survivor who's being stalked, for example. Okay, you're trying to find a job. This person is stalking you. They're outside. My daddy used to be in the bushes, so I remember this very keenly as a child. And it was so crazy because we would leave and my mother would be like, "Oh, your daddy is over there. Tell him good morning." "Hi, daddy." We running into the bushes to tell him good morning. Anyway, so you're leaving the house and your abuser knows you. You were in a relationship. They've been observing you for a long time, whatever the case may be. And they know how you look when you're leaving the house for different things. So leave the house like you're going to the laundromat. You're going to go run some errands. You're going to the grocery store or something like that. Carry a bag with your clothes and your interviewing clothes, or put them in the trunk of your car if you have a car the night before or something like that. So then you're leaving like regular, normal, and then changing your clothes midway at a McDonald's or a fast food restaurant, and then going on to the interview so that you can get to the interview. So really real life scenarios, what does it look like? How to reduce the threat, and how to listen to what the survivor is really saying the real problem is. Read the room. So in reading the room is really talking about where a person lives, how they live, what do they want, not impressing your thoughts and your dreams, your what you see for the person. Like, well, I see you doing this, and you might have had a whole vision. However, we're not going to impress that on the person, and really knowing the culture, the what is going on in the community that you're in, knowing that Black people aren't a monolith, we aren't one way. In the South, we might move differently than in the North, for example, the East Coast, West Coast. And in there's so many different regions of what that looks like. And really listening to help. We are not a monolith. So sorry to skip ahead, but so in that being said, what does that look like when you're working with different survivors? So that you're not every person that's coming in, you're not judging them and looking at them the same way. Like it's a stream of survivors, and you don't know one from the other. Physical safety. Thinking about as we safety plan, we've historically done a lot of work around physical safety. We don't talk about it as much now because there's so many other things to talk about, but I think it's still important to have those kind of conversations, to have resources and support around physical safety, to continue to educate ourselves because things are continually growing in the field. I mean, I've learned so much recently on new innovations around what's going on with someone being choked and suffocated and how that affects your brain. So really understanding that. So if someone says, "Oh, I was choked and I blacked out," to encourage them to go to the hospital, for example. And thinking about with physical safety, that could also include their children. So there's so many in the Black family that would then try to retaliate with the abuser when they learn that their loved one the victim has been abused. It might be the children of the victim, the other family members. And so how can we reduce more people being harmed too? Yes, Ayana.
Yeah, I'm just thinking when you said the thing about, choking and strangulation, I'm thinking about language and making sure that we're understanding the language that survivors are using about the physical violence they experience, but also thinking about, I've had it, a good amount of times where a survivor will say, "Well, yeah, I sustained injuries, but I fought them back. Like, I'm okay, I fought them back." And yes, they might have been able to fight back, but that doesn't mean there still aren't serious physical safety concerns. And so to getting survivors to understand that, but also on the other hand, for advocates to understand just because somebody says they fought back doesn't mean they're not seriously injured, especially when it comes to like strangulation or choking.
That is absolutely correct. And you can't just look at someone and judge and say, oh, they, you can't look at someone and judge. And so, and after talking about that, I want to talk about how the soft life is safety. And just as we are planning, as we're creating, as we're thinking about a better life, what do we have? What are our visions for Black survivors and the future? And so saying that if we make a declaration and saying that Black women deserve ease, rest, and softness, not just escape, what does that look like in your program, in your long-term goals, in your vision statement? If we say the goal is getting a survivor out alive is just the floor, the soft life is the goal. And when I say soft life, I'm not saying lazy, not working, not doing anything, or any of those negative things that people have connected with soft life. I'm talking about ease. I'm talking about not having ongoing trauma, uh, having a planning and having the life that they want, with the absence of harm, with abundance, with what do you want? You want to go back to school? You want to have a job? What do you want to do with your life? And that was a question that I would ask survivors when I would start working with a survivor. We would create vision boards and goals around their vision and dreams, and they would actually cry because one, they've never had the opportunity to really process what do I want, not what somebody told me, what did I was forced on me, what did I have to do, what I had to do to survive. What do I want in my life in 5 years and 10 years? What does this look like? What do I want in 2 weeks? What do I want my life to look like next week when I leave this abuser, for example? So thinking about how that was one way I incorporated it with the goal setting, the vision board. So it can be smaller steps. It can also be, okay, we're gonna, have work with the beauty salon and have a salon pamper day. I love to see, organizations do that, but it's also inner work too on what does that look like? What do I want my life to look like? So as I'm doing this very, very hard work with you and your program, and I'm not living in the place that I want to live in, and I'm going to a job, I'm interviewing for jobs on this very hard economic climate. What do I have to look forward to? What does that look like? So incorporating those kind of conversations, thinking about what does that look in your program to actually start to have that kind of conversation with the survivors that you work with. All right. Okay, thinking about community safety and how isolation can be an abuser's tool. And in a place like the Virgin Islands, you're on an island, you're separated. Isolation is a big tactic here. But when I was in Detroit, that was a tactic that was used on me. Your mama, she don't need to come around, and I don't like your best friend. That's isolation. Cut you off of people, resources that will actually notice that it's a problem. The I talked about the village earlier and how to plan with and without the village. And then working with really, having community awareness activities and things like that to support the people around them, because that can make a difference as well. If you've been in and out of this relationship 7 times, they say is the average, 12 times, people start to get tired and like, well, just call me after they left. And now that person has been removed because they didn't know that that was a part of the cycle. And, maybe if they knew, they might have hung in there a little longer on your side. So thinking about community as well. And then as we think about community in a culturally specific way. How can we talk to the community in the community language instead of using our industry terms all the time? They don't know IPV. They don't know all of the acronyms that we say in domestic violence. The survivors don't either. What are we talking about? Who are we talking to? We need to talk to the people. And so in saying that, we need to speak or at least know the language so that people feel comfortable coming to you. And, when they are feeling comfortable to tell their story, that they're not censoring their story, that they don't feel like they have to speak in the King's English, that they don't have to, figure out how can I, tone down my profanity. I want to cuss, I want to use slang words. I don't want to code switch. What does that look like? And so they're texting you and they might use acronyms. So instead of you saying, well, what does that mean? What is IKR? Well, just go, it's a website called Urban Dictionary. Go on there and say, what is IKR? Oh, I know, right? Okay, I know, right. For example, I have to do that all the time on TikTok. Like, what does that mean? I'm looking it up. So being abreast of, instead of just like, you know, I'm 54 years old. So I could say, well, I'm born in the 70s. I don't need to know all this tickety talk language. I could do that. I can say that. But I try to keep up with it so that when people do come to me, I know what they're talking about. I'm not saying you have to keep up with all the trends, but at least have access to the, you could Google, you could ask AI, what does this term mean? What is this expression? I saw this on TikTok. You could go to Urban Dictionary, do all the things so that people feel comfortable. So when they come to your program and they say, I was choked out, you understand what that means. Or if they use other language or vernacular or that they want to cuss. I mean, and I understand. I've had this conversation. Like, I understand you're a faith-based program and you're like, well, we're in a church and we don't want you to cuss. But I feel like if a person goes actually in a church, then they probably won't. But if they do slip up, they're going through some trauma. Can we just meet the people where they are and then grow with love? Can we think about that? Okay. Any questions? I see some chats. What are y'all talking about in the chat?
There's a lot going on in here.
I'm
A lot going on for sure. We were talking
looking at the
about,
number.
yeah, we were talking about mobile safety planning, mobile advocacy. We talked about there's some folks that do hospital-based work, and we're saying how it's so important, especially around language, to understand like the risks that people are in. I gave an example of, talking about language, how I worked with a survivor and all she said was she was choked. And if I had just left it at that and not asked other questions, like there was so much more to what that meant. And come to find out, like she had lost consciousness. She had like urinated on herself. Like it was a very, very dangerous time for her. But the language that she had, that's all she had to be able to really explain what happened. And so again, it's so important for people to like really delve into what people are saying. um I think it was Ash had a really good perspective on, how great would it be if programs are able to provide some funding for survivors to get their hair and nails done, and like the relationship that it does play with safety planning and empowerment. So yeah, a lot of good stuff going on, Caitlin.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna have to read through it. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So someone mentioned digital safety, and that's where we're at right now. So looking at beyond passwords and how tracking is now built into families' everyday life with 360 trackers. My youngest daughter, who's 22, her generation, like that's how you show that you're really friends with someone, that you love them, is that you are tracking their location at all times. So, like, I was telling her, oh, their grandmother was just in the hospital. She was like, oh, I was wondering why they were both at the grandma house at the same time. Like, they really tune into that. And so, but these things, as powerful or as cute or whatever, as functional as they are, can also be very, very dangerous to survivors. And as that age demographic that really relies on those tracking devices start to have challenges and come into our programs, how are we going to help them to resolve that? What programs, apps, services do we have to lower the risk around that? Um, as well as Cash App, Venmo, all of these different apps and programs. And so I don't have the answers, but that's something we need to actually work on and talk to and understand that generation and how ingrained it is with younger Black survivors, as well as older ones are also, being tracked and being tracked unknowingly with tracker I on their GPS and they don't even know it's on there. And so, how can we integrate this into a part of our conversation that we're having with survivors around digital planning? Because getting back to, we insist on them coming to our offices and then they're being tracked, we're actually putting them in a very dangerous situation. So, what does that look like? Even if we feel like, oh, our office isn't listed, it's not known, don't rely on that. Don't rely on a person not knowing that's what the address is. Okay, so we want to have a minimum footprint, but maximum effect, maximum positive effect. So the minimum footprint goes back to what the HIPAA example I was talking about earlier. And how can we have the minimum footprint in a survivor's life where we're not taking over their life, we're not calling them all the time, we're not demanding that they come into our office 2 and 3 times for workshops, for this, for these kind of services, for them to qualify or to, earn the services that we provide. So what does that look like? But how can we minimize our impact on the survivor, but then provide them with the maximum support and resources? And how do we do this specifically in a culturally specific way for Black survivors? And I'm opening it up for like 5 minutes, not even. I'll open it for a couple minutes if anybody has something to say on this. What are some things that work for you? All right. Yeah. Just put it in the chat. I'm not gonna hold you. We don't have a whole lot of time, but
I
somebody
think
has something.
I was just gonna say one really simple thing is asking the survivor what they want. Like, how much do you want me to call you? Do you want me to text you or before a
Mhm.
call? Like, something really simple can go a very, very long way.
I agree. Have any programs thought about creating portals, like resource portals where a person can go on their own? Apps are a lot more easier to create nowadays. But some kind of portal with an escape button type of situation on a website, a page of your website, something that maybe they could log in, that could be their own dedicated portal with information, resources, so they don't have to call you and talk to you. You could upload, kind of like, are y'all familiar with my chart health portal? So, a lot of hospital systems have health portals now where they'll upload. I can schedule my appointments, so they can schedule time with you. Like, thinking about that kind of thing, maybe a college. I'm not saying you have to pay a whole lot of money on the app. It could be a project for you can get a college to design this kind of portal or app for you, kind of thing, is an idea. So just thinking of digital ways, but also non-digital touch ways. This can also couple with the, having the mobile situation, going out in the community, letting people know where you are, that you have these after hour times. Again, to people have to work, but they still are going through survivor situations. And so after our weekend times, you twice a month, you on the Saturday or on a Sunday after a church, that's a big church in your community, just different ways you could touch point and make things a lot easier for Black survivors to get the support and the resources that they need, with in a way that provides grace and that they can feel comfortable in some of their own environments that they're comfortable with. So okay, talking about economic abuse a little bit and economic safety. And what does that look like for Black survivors? Um, Thinking about it on all ends of the spectrum, from public benefits being threatened or taken away, medication, other items that they need that could cause economic ramification, their jobs being threatened, to those with wealth, those with means. And what does that look like? Um, how many of you actually have had someone with actual means, or quite a few people, come to your program? Is there a reason why people middle class and up may not feel comfortable coming to your program? And is there something you could do? Maybe that's not funding for that, but it's still a need. What does that look like to provide services for that, for people in that particular financial class? Maybe that's something you never thought of. Give it a thought. Okay. Thinking thinking about what does your economic program look like? I do understand that this is a controversial area because unfortunately, as advocates, specifically Black advocates, we are severely underpaid, underfunded, under resourced. And so you may already be doing the job of three people, and you're looking at your checking account and you're trying to figure it out every month, and you're saying, I can't add one more thing. We will get a financial planner, or we'll get a bank, or we'll get this person on our board who's an accountant to do the economic training because I don't feel comfortable or confident enough to do it. And I just want to encourage you that you can do it. It doesn't have to be a whole additional program. Just integrate it into the safety planning, into the work that you're already doing. Make it a priority. Just fold it in. Don't make it extra. If you have the capacity to do extra programs, amazing, wonderful. That would be beneficial to your community. If you don't, then you could just add it to the list of questions, to the list of support that you provide. Um, there was a PNC Bank in Detroit had worked with us to help survivors get second chance bank accounts. That was an amazing program. So are there other programs that you can connect with that are reputable, not like a multi-level marketing person or anything like that, but like a reputable program that can actually help survivors to move the needle financially, that can help them to guard their finances, to protect their finances? What does that look like in a Black household? How do you keep that safe? And maybe that's multiple systems. Maybe you need to partner with a post office box so that they can get their mail there. Maybe you advise them or help them to set these things up so that they get paperless delivery of their statements and things of that nature, that maybe go to a new email, Gmail account that they set up just for their financial documents. So thinking about the whole process and working through the whole system, and what does that look like to keep the survivors safe, to get their money safe. And then thinking about things that may be important to them that aren't important to you. So that could include getting their hair done, getting their nails done, buying clothes, whatever that looks like, making sure their children are put together, paying their tithes, paying religious fees or other obligations for their church. All of these things you may not agree with, but how do you still support them in the things that help them, that energize them? And then what do they do with the rest? Maybe that's the part that you talk about in budgeting and moving forward, and thinking about what does a culturally specific financial empowerment program look like. And I'm gonna put another shout out for Ujima. Contact them if you're really stuck on this, to help you through that part. I wish I could, y'all need to call me back for that. To do economic justice, because I love talking about that all
Oh,
day.
you know I got you, Kalyn.
So safety is more than physical. So we talked about that. I'm just gonna go on. So I wanted to talk about all the different ways that it shows up. Whoops, I mean to have that one on there. All right, I cut all those off. Oh, go back. All right, economic safety. All right, we talked about the interviewing, my interviewing technique already. But also, I wanted to revisit the Google number account again. Amazing. If you have other um, resources or websites or different things that help survivors, drop them in the chat. That can help. The Allstate Foundation, they still had their moving ahead with money management curriculum on their website somewhere, I believe. So if you need some help with basic economic justice that's not culturally specific, but at least it'll give you a start, you can try and get that resource through the Allstate Foundation. In working specifically with Black people and our money, we are very private about our money, how much we make, what we do with it. And so if someone is open to you and like you're like, okay, let's do a budget, and they actually are willing to tell you how much they make and what they're spending their money on, and they might buy beer, they might buy some weed, they might do something that you don't agree with, If you flinch or if you act like that's not something that's right, then you might actually lose that survivor and them open continue to open up and talk to you. So how do you work through it? Um, I definitely in helping the survivors in the past, we had beer on the budget and lottery tickets. Let's keep the budget real. If this is what you're gonna leave here and we get this pristine budget and then you're still gonna buy the weed, you still gonna buy the beer, like what we didn't actually help you through the process. So keeping it real. Am I too real right now?
I
Let
mean,
me go.
I think it's a level of honesty that people need though, because a lot of times we try to act like, oh, just because we're not okay with it, the survivor is not. That's still their life. Like they're only gonna stay with you for what, 30, 60 days. So let them live their life and help them be safer in it.
Okay, I just want to check in before I get too real. Oh yeah, no, seriously. Being really serious about that. And what does that look like? And then the other thing that I don't like, this is my time to talk about I don't like. I don't like it when advocates insist on knowing how much the survivor has. Because again, why do you need to know? So that gets back to the HIPAA. You really don't need to know how much this person makes. If I'm incorrect, please put it in the chat. Please. Okay, so in the event that you really don't need to know, do you need to know how much they make for you to help them with housing? Do you need to know to help them make a budget? You could tell them, give them the structure to make the budget, and they could do it on their own. Why do they have to sit there in front of you so that you could validate that they actually did the budget? Again, giving Black women autonomy over their lives. Okay. And this is a part of how can we lighten the load? We should not be adding to the load, piling on them, piling on. Black women have already been piled on. Black survivors have been piled on already. How can we lighten the load? Thinking about safety with the children. So, we talked a little bit about CPS earlier, but involving the children and thinking about a whole holistic safety plan, um, and what does that look like? And how can we keep Black survivors, Black victims from continuously sacrificing themselves to try to protect their children, but it's not really protecting them in the long run by in different situations. So helping them work through situations in regards to their children, and that is the basis of that. Okay, so I want to talk about your list of this your homework. So helping survivors set up Google Voice, you can set up on yourself to see what it looks like or how it works, because that's what I did before I referred people. It wasn't even Google Voice then, it was something else. They had bought it. But so that you could actually feel comfortable, walk through it, try it yourself. It's free. Um, Contacting Ujima for TA and resources. Thinking about how you could create a community hub in the Black community to help Black survivors. So churches, beauty salons, and that's a conversation we had back in the day, like going out in the community, going talking to the beauty salons, talking to the churches, but that's not what I'm talking about. Talking to the community groups. I'm talking about partnerships. I'm talking about actually providing services in these spaces if possible, being more innovative and thinking about how can it be effective in 2026 and working with them in partnership, not just talking to them. Um, Thinking about your own intake process. So walking through your own lobby, whether it's virtual or in person. What is the process of what does it actually look like for a survivor to go through your organization? What is their first impression? Is it cold? Is it sterile? Or is it like going to Auntie and them house? What are you doing if you're saying we provide culturally specific services for Black people? What does that look like for Black survivors? And I want you to go through it as you are a survivor. So filling out the paperwork. What do I do if I can't, my reading level isn't there? What do I have to do? What does this person sound like when I call them? What's my next step? Do I have to, how many steps is it? And maybe if you tried it yourself, you would make some adjustments. Thinking about your referrals, because sometimes we had a partnership we established 15 years ago, and we just be referring people to this program, this shelter, this whatever it is, food bank, pantry, clothing closet, daycare center, whatever it is. So looking at all the numbers that you actually refer people to, call through like a secret shopper, like you're a survivor to get services. Talk to people, talk to your clients, the participants of your program to see what was their experience with that, because you may need to change your referral list, even if that means we don't have a referral to send you to. That's something you need to work through, because you don't want to be, well, the program just sent me to them, so now both of y'all are xed out on the list. Like, your program isn't nothing because you sending me to this program that traumatized me, and this program isn't nothing because they actually traumatized me. And not just, it's one shelter, it's literally one emergency shelter program in the city of Detroit, and they're always full. Why would I just give the survivor, like, oh, I'm gonna transfer you to the shelter program, without checking to see if they're full? They're always full. How is that helpful? It's just getting them off your phone, and that's not right. All right, we talked about the hubs. So I hope this idea sparks some. But here's what this could look like. So, having mobile hours there, training stylists how to listen and how to contact you. Again, we're not training them to be advocates, but it would be great if they came through the advocate training. We could say, hey, we have this 40-hour advocate training. You should come on. Maybe offering them a discount to attend because they aren't a domestic violence program, maybe offering them a free opportunity to attend. But having them as ambassadors where they know to call us and what to do in emergency situations. Leaving resources there at the different sites, and seeing how you in the church, how you can actually support other ministries beyond the women's ministry. So the men's ministry, the deacon board, etc. And thinking about what does that look like across faiths and in other religions as well. And really thinking about how you can connect and be in places where survivors actually are and where they go. And so this is more than just your outreach. This is actually doing the work in community with Black survivors and Black victims. Thinking about emotional and mental safety and what does that look like as you're doing this work for yourself and for the people that you work with. And if that means partnering with agencies and organizations that can also support you, because you might say, I was a one-person shop when I started my organization. I am not a master social worker. So working and partnering with master social workers that could do that part of the work, that could help to support, partnering with local colleges and universities, and just getting the support for yourself, your staff, and for the people that you serve. Thinking about, we talked about how the effects, it can physically affect us as advocates, but thinking about the physical effects for survivors of being believed, knowing that medical racism is real even in 2026, and that there's a distrust of therapy. So we can easily, say, go to a therapist. Like I told y'all need to go to a therapist. But we could say that to a survivor or a victim, but they may have a history or may have heard about a family member or something like that. And then reproductive coercion is a real thing, as well as getting support around that. And what does that look like? So I just wanted to name some things, and also how can we provide support in regards to health, because our health is everything and survivors' health is everything as well. Beyond just the emergency, how are they getting ongoing support? Because you're in this traumatic situation. You're not going for your annual visits. You're not going for dental appointments. You're not going for the things that you may need, getting your high blood pressure pill refilled and things of that nature. So how can we support survivors on an ongoing basis to get treatment and getting support through a hospital or a clinic situation and thinking about what does that mean in your community and how can you support that specifically with survivors. So I have some answers, but not all of them. So we can talk about it. So, okay. I wanted to open it up. I want to open it for any questions or answers. I want to look through the chat. My name is Kalyn Foy. I've been doing this work for a long time. I am the founder of Sisters Acquiring Financial Empowerment in Detroit, Michigan, and most recently, I founded in September the Virgin Islands Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Please check us out and support us. It is a territory-wide domestic violence coalition here in the U.S. Virgin Islands that I'm really excited to get that going. We have started doing the work already, and I'm really, really excited about it. We also have a website if you want to check us out, vicadv.org. And you can scan this QR code for all of my information. I will also drop a link to my digital business card in the chat. And now I want to open it up for any questions or anything. I want to look at um, the chat. And what did I miss? What do we need to talk about? It looks, I see a lot of conversation going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of great conversation and back and forth and adding on to each other's thoughts. Folks are definitely saying thank you for the presentation, a lot to think through. Felt really engaged. Um, yeah, there's a lot in here. They said it's really impactful. I haven't even asked you, but you know I am. I'm already plotting some more programming. I'm like maybe let's do a part two and work through some case scenarios and we can really, delve into a couple different examples because as you were saying, our community's not a monolith and Ujima absolutely represents multiple parts of the diasporic community. So African or Black American, African immigrant, refugee, Afro-Latino, Afro-Caribbean folks, African immigrants. So again, there's a lot of different ways we can show up and be in space. So I think that would be a great opportunity. But I think this was like such foundational, like need to know baseline, where to start, like everything was really useful and really tangible to grasp onto. So I appreciate you so much, Kalyn. I'm seeing if anybody else has.
I
Oh,
saw
reshared Kalyn's. Go ahead.
someone asked the question, how many women or advocates develop autoimmune disorders related to the work we do and the labor we're forced to do in society? I was diagnosed with lupus in 2020, in 2006, like when I first started the organization. So I can't quite blame it on there, even though I do. Uh, but I would suspect it's high because I mean not just autoimmune disorders, but like the rate of cancer of
Yeah.
advocates and other health issues. I breast cancer in 2022. Like I'm just hearing the stories and it is high, and that's why I'm all of my coaching is a soft life coaching. It's unfortunate. I don't want other people to have this like serious illness before you start to rethink how you do and how you work. But how can you still be effective?
Hmm.
I think there can be a balance. That's what I'm living right now is I don't want to contribute to the brain drain that's happening in this movement due to that. I have so much to give and I want to give back and I want to continue to support this work because I feel like it's so important. Does that mean that okay, it was good for me to transition from direct services to doing coalition work? And so thinking about where there's research, there's so many areas in this movement that still need support, that need your voice, that need your knowledge. So I just would ask people to consider that as they move through their careers and think about their career trajectory while they think about their own health, mental health, physical health.
Absolutely.
Ayana, what were you about to say? I'm sorry, honey.
No, I was just gonna say, I reshared Kalyn and Kalyn added it as well. Digital business card so folks can connect. Again, Kalyn is, as you see, a wealth of information, honey. And always down to like support folks and support advocates and just share what she knows. So definitely please connect. Again, please feel free to connect with Ujima. We have about 4 minutes. If anybody else has thoughts, questions, comments, just feedback they want to give on this session as well.
Who else gonna you could just raise your hand, do a hand raise or a thumbs up or something if you're gonna try Google Voice. It's been around forever as an advocacy tool. Whoop whoop.
Oh,
I
good.
love it. And who's gonna pull up urban dictionary the next time you're trying to have a conversation with someone
Especially the younger folks, because I'm like, my godson tells me, I'm like, what are you talking about? Let me go look it up.
no real. I try to at least look it up before I ask. Like, I'm
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, because he's gonna be like, oh, you're just you're such an auntie. I'm like, oh, I am.
Right, I am. That's not an insult. Any questions? Anything you all want? It's some seasoned folks on here. Don't make me call you out.
Right, we see you. We looking at your name. You know who you are.
If you want to share anything, I'm just glad to see some friendly folks here today that you are all here to share, learn, grow, and know how to support. And really thinking about that you really are committed to supporting Black victims and survivors in your own respective communities, whatever that looks like in your community. Lean into your what makes your community unique instead of trying to just make it a one size fits all type of situation. Lean into that. That's your strength. Your how your community is, what their values, what you don't value. Lean into that because that's what's actually going to connect you and make sense to those that you want to support. Definitely going to use Urban Dictionary. Okay.
And another thing I would add to Kalyn, what you've been talking around is like if you are not part of the Black community, or even if you are part of the Black community and it's not your cultural experience, just go read a book, like watch a movie. Like there are a lot of amazing resources written, produced, developed by Black folk, by Black women that you could really tap into to enhance your capacity as well. And that's part of like the informing yourself versus having the survivor inform you all the time process. So,
And if you use ChatGPT or Google, you could ask for a recommended reading list, or even regular Google now is AI powered, so you can kind of talk to it more. You say, "Can you
hmm
give me a recommended reading list on this?" Or you could even say, "Can you make it a quick read?" Or can you summarize it? Because I know we're all busy, but I think it's important that you get the information.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. On that note, we're gonna give you 1 minute back to go do some breathing, do some rejoicing on this nice Friday. Thank you again, Kalyn. You are always, always, always welcome, and we always need you to show up and lead us through these spaces. Really appreciate you. Everybody, thank you for showing up on this Friday. Stay tuned for upcoming Ujima programming. We have some things going on in July that I think you'll be interested in as well. Check out our YouTube. We're uploading more of our programming there, and so we have some really interesting Ujima talks that we've developed recently and webinars. Kalyn, I'm gonna have you back, you already know, for another workshop or two or three. In the meantime, have a great week on everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
And my digital card, make sure you follow me, connect with me, and sign up for my email list. You'll get a free digital download. So check me out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kalyn. Thanks, you all. Have a good one.